Members of the public, do we?
Yeah, we've got Byron P. and we have Nick Peach.
Well, Nick Pate, who's now a member of the public.
Yeah,
Hi, Nick.
Hello.
you just couldn't stay away from us.
Anyway,
Well, I thought I was still on this for this last meeting, so that's why I'm joining you. So I'm I'll be in the middle of halfway between the committee member and the public for now.
Oh, I'm
I know
not
that's
sure.
not allowed.
Yeah, well, when it gets to voting, no, it's not. You're
No,
not.
I understand that. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Any other public comments? Okay. Moving right along, Public Works 4.1, Water Utilities Update by Patrick. You're on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay,
I
good.
just give you a quick introduction of everyone. I forgot to do that, sorry. Maurice Gills is our chair, ex-mayor, and Patrick Graham is our director of engineering. And we have Raj Hayre, who's our chief financial officer. Annette Frischman is our utilities coordinator. Councillor Allison Morris, who is our council liaison. Glenn Skierhan is a consultant. He's going to improve our water districts. Aoife Cashman is our finance officer. I'm the committee coordinator. And our LAC members are volunteers. Marie, I mentioned Ronald Cliff and Tanya Brown. Thank you for volunteering. And Nick Page is our alumni.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Patrick.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So, in terms of an update, the primary focus in the Cove Bay system has been the construction of the new water treatment plant, which is still on track for completion by the end of March. And we're expecting some major milestones in the next few weeks. The bolted steel tank is expected to arrive tomorrow. And then on the 15th, our ceramic filters and integrated dewatering system. So the primary treatment process is expected to arrive on December 15th. Myself and the Dewey son, the treatment plant operator, went to the Purifics factory to do the factory acceptance testing and training on the system. It looks like a great system. We don't have any concerns about having chosen the right treatment process. I'm just looking at the agenda here, and there was some question about, there was an item there about repayment of internal debt. I thought maybe the easiest thing to do would be to go through the summary of expenditures and where the money's coming from. So I'll share my screen. Can everyone see?
Not yet.
It's black.
Yeah.
At least it's not red.
Patrick, did you share the screen? And there we go.
Okay. So this is the spreadsheet looking at our expenditures on the project. So there's the Industra, the prime contractor, their construction contract. Currently, it's 5.866 million. There's been a couple of change orders, but nothing major, in the range of about 1.5% of the contract value. That's about 48% spent. We're expecting a major invoice in December, accounting for the tank delivery. We purchased the cuff and dewatering system, the Purifics equipment directly. That's expected to arrive on the 15th. There was the construction services, design revisions and construction services from WSP, environmental monitoring, PLC programming. So those are all ongoing costs related to the construction and commissioning of the plant. 800,000 was what was spent before this year. In prior years for design, pilot plant testing, and some site work at the treatment plant site. We're cost sharing the BC Hydro service with the developer, the Grafton Lake lands, and as well as the municipal access road. So that brings our total costs up to 9.1 million. The total project budget is 9.263. We'll show that in a minute, leaving some contingency remaining. But we're not expecting any major changes, so we're okay. In terms of where that project budget, that 9.263 comes from, this is essentially what we're looking at. There was the infrastructure grant, which was based on, well, that was approved a while back. The 1.2 from Cove Bay Water System Capital Reserves, the amount that was borrowed as approved by the referendum, the 2.5. This is still to be determined, but this is what we're expecting for the contribution from the developer for accounting for his infrastructure that's included in the building, the fire pump and subdivision system. The first phase of the Grafton Lake lands, the subdivision is expected very soon, and those units will be added to the Cove Bay water system and make their contribution accordingly. And then this, I guess, was the item that made up the shortfall. Community land sales for Area 1, Lot 2, Area 1, the lot on the corner that's being developed currently, and then the health center lot. And so those funds were applied to the project, Cove Bay Water Treatment Plant project, in order to be able to proceed with it. And so there's a requirement to repay those funds over the next 10 years. I believe it's within the next 10 years. That's in addition to the borrowing that was approved by referendum last year. So that's the project budget and expenditures. There wasn't really anything significant that's significant to report in terms of operations of the Cove Bay water system. If there's any questions about that.
Quick question on the 1.175 million. Is the anticipation that will be through new connections over that 10-year period, or is there any assumed method of doing that repayment, or parcel tax or fees? Where's it going to come from?
It hasn't been assumed. We have to develop a strategy for that. Where, as you're aware, currently working on some plans for potentially adding the Eagle Cliff water system and others in the Ocean View Scarborough area and along Eagle Cliff Road to the Cove Bay water system. So that would involve a contribution to the Cove Bay reserves. So I'm hoping it comes from there.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. Anything else there then, Patrick?
Patrick, just the question of the cost moving forward. So it sounds like some of there was some uncertainty around things like geotech before excavation got going and things. I presume those risks around budget have narrowed a bit, or are you anticipating anything outstanding that you're sort of concerned about still?
No, the essentially anything that we had to change, we've changed. We're out of the ground. Everything underground is complete. There's some site work remaining, but it's more finishing the site. And now we're into installing the mechanical and electrical systems in the building. The building is essentially complete. There's just a few doors to be installed, and so the elements of the project that are at risk of having change orders applied are essentially behind us. If that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it's good to know. I assumed that. I just wanted to ask the question.
One question that comes to my mind that I keep thinking about is, are we required to have the UV or not?
No.
It's
No.
out then?
It is. So as you recall, earlier in the year, when the tenders closed, we had to trim a large amount of cost from the project. And so that was done in various ways, reducing the size of the building, the changing the filtration system itself, and then also eliminating the UV, which was agreed to by Coastal Health. It was typically they like to see redundancy in a treatment process. In this case, they recognized our cost constraints, and everything treated by the UV is treated by the ceramic filters and chlorination. So it's not like we're missing a treatment process. We just don't have that extra barrier.
Okay, now on that then, the staff training level, we're at level 1. We go up to level 2, I take it then, if we don't have the UV. How much is involved in upgrading staff from 1 to 2 as far as educational requirements, that sort of thing?
There's training required through EOCP, Environmental Operator Certification Program.
Right.
And there may need to be some participation with other jurisdictions to allow the operator to participate in site visits and hands-on learning. If we had the UV system included, that would have put it into a level 3
right.
Certification requirement. So we do have an operator appointed internally, and we'll be working with him to make sure he gets the required certifications. One of the challenges is mostly everything's available online, and some people learn well in that capacity and some not as well. So we're hoping to be able to find some in-person training in the near future.
Okay. Good. Okay, so carry on then.
So just looking at this agenda here, we have issued we did issue a request for proposals and selected a consultant team to help us with concept design and moving forward with more detailed design and planning for improvements to several water systems on the island. So one of the projects that pertains to Cove Bay would be a major one, looking at the Eagle Cliff connection and moving that design concept forward.
Sorry, Patrick, do you want to keep this spreadsheet? Is it still relevant?
Oh, are we still looking at it?
Yeah,
I can
that's share.
We've moved on.
I can stop the share. There we go. So that one is not being, in terms of funding the design work. We have applied for grant funding, which we'll find out about probably not until late summer next year, possibly fall. In terms of funding the design work, that's been applied to the Eagle Cliff water system in terms of those costs, as well as an infrastructure planning grant that we received. There is some minor improvements that are being investigated in the Cove Bay system, and that work is being funded by the Cove Bay water system. And that would be, there's a section of asbestos cement line. There's a fair bit of it in the Cove Bay water system, but there's one section that's been causing some problems that we're looking at replacing and improvements to a PRV station.
Sorry, try to run the time again.
There's a section of AC water main and a PRV station along Miller Road. So between Miller Road and the Senator Place cul-de-sac, that section of water main we're looking at replacing, potentially the whole section, or it may just be a part of it.
Have we got substantial leakage in that area?
There has been recurring leakage. I don't think it's leaking currently, but staff have observed repeated failures in the area of the PRV station.
Sorry, in the area of which again? Sorry.
Of the PRV station.
Is that right on the corner of the where the old gas station was?
Let me just pull this up. I just happened to have a share screen.
That's opening a real can of worms. If you're talking all the way to Senator Place from the main crossroads, that would be a huge chunk of water main.
Well, we're not necessarily going to replace that whole thing. We're getting some design work done to look at that now. And it may be that the improvements are more minor at this time. I mean, eventually that whole loop of AC water main is going to need to be replaced. And that will be a long-term plan.
Right. No, I guess the thinking, the logic of my question is that we've had a policy of repair as you go up till now on that. And because we've been talking about replacing it for the last 20 years.
Right.
And the asbestos, it seems to work okay, other than the saddles going into the individual connections start to fail. So I was just wondering how far along we've gotten into that scenario, if it's happening with any degree of frequency, or if there's something completely different that's doing bad.
It looks like the failures are likely at the connections to the PRV station. So it may be that we can limit the work to the vicinity of the PRV only.
Okay.
And to address those concerns.
Is that then the one right on the main crossroads there, right at the old gas station, right at the main corner of Miller, Dorman, and Trunk Road?
No, I was trying to share my screen to show you. Didn't seem to work. Let me try again. Share screen.
There we go. Okay,
So
where
it's
is that?
So that's along Miller Road. And this is Senator Road, the cul-de-sac at the end of Senator Road.
Is Miller Road the one with a dotted blue line through it?
This is Miller Road up here, yeah.
Well, I didn't think Senator Road ran off Miller Road.
It doesn't.
Oh, so that's sort of the dead end bit of Senator and it keeps going up the hill to Miller's. Okay. got you.
This isn't a road. This is just a right of way.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the right of way runs through between those two houses at the dead end circle at the top of Senator. Okay, know where you are.
Oh, that's much shorter. Good.
Yeah, it's down.
Yeah.
It's right down in
So-
the
Yeah, different conversation. Okay, fair enough.
Part we're looking at is from here, from Miller Road to the cul-de-sac.
Right. Through those, wow. Not a fun spot to do work, but anyway. Sure, sorry, so carry on.
So that would be, those would be the two projects in our current scope of design that would pertain to the Cove Bay water system.
Okay,
So those were in the RFP document, right, Patrick?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Can you unscreen share again?
Yes. So if we looked at in terms of we've attached a breakdown of the consultant costs for the scope of work that was in the RFP. And so for phase one, we're only looking at a few $1,000s for the Cove Bay system, and that's really looking at the project we just talked about.
okay. That's
And-
$7,000 or something like that? Or this is going into our 2021 budget now, is it?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. So maybe we can talk about that at the budget when we go through the
Sure.
budget.
Sure, let's do it that way.
So the other item to flag here is the work that was done this year, looking at the sustainability of Grafton Lake as a
what
water
about the
supply.
Lenora Road project, Patrick? And did you mention
What's
that?
that?
I was just looking at the list of updates. Did you do Lenora Road?
I'm not sure what that's referring to, actually.
That refers to the issue with Greg Pollard, since his letter went to council and the LAC and staff.
Right.
We got it being
There's a
addressed.
resident along Lenora Road whose basement is flooding and was suspecting that it could have something to do with a failed municipal water main. We have done extensive checking for leaks in that area and haven't discovered any issues.
It was if his estimate was correct, it was a substantial amount of water though.
Yeah.
More than Cove Bay was using at any one time.
Yeah, I think he's got groundwater getting into his substructure, and that's not.
It sounded like, sorry to interrupt, it sounds like it was a new issue, so that's what, I mean, I haven't followed up, I just know it from his email, but.
Yeah. I don't think it relates to Cove Bay water in any way, that issue.
Sounds like we should use it for a water source though.
But we'd
Yeah.
have to treat it.
Yeah, you could, but there's a lot of water.
Refresh my memory. What's the address on Lenora?
It was like 11:15 or something,
Yeah,
11:45, somewhere around there.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's at the west side, lower side of the road, about up near the top though. And the number that he gave something like 1,358 gallons per minute or per hour. It was a ridiculous amount. And I'm pretty sure that he meant that he was pumping that out by the day or something like that. I can't imagine that his numbers were correct.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. And the other item under 4.1 here was that looking at Grafton Lake water sustainability
Right.
assessment. There has been some questions coming up about that report recently, mainly around the long-term growth projections. So that's something that we will be revisiting as part of the concept design phase. Looking at the Eagle Cliff connection, we will be reviewing the future growth scenarios and making sure that we're capturing everything that might be expected within the Cove Bay system, and potentially adding to the system. And a model has been developed so that it's fairly efficient to assess alternate development scenarios.
Yeah, I think on that one, if I could just jump in for a second. We've been doing this since 1995. We have got more reports of projected usage. And the one nice thing about this, I think it said that we have 395 cubic meters of storage per connection. That means we have 87,000 gallons of licensed storage in that lake per connection that we now have. So we have a ridiculous overabundance of water in the lake compared to our size. And in the past, it was sort of a political or a philosophical discussion of, can we limit development on Gulf Islands generally by saying that there's a water shortage? And it's an argument that worked on a lot of Gulf Islands, and people tried to apply it to Bowen to basically pretend that we had a shortage, whereas Grafton Lake really means we don't have anything like a shortage. So I'd hate to see us start spending more money again to prove once again that we could double the size of this system without without running into any problem. But when we get up to 6.1, I'd like to discuss this point again with my idea of us supplying water outside the district. So,
Yeah.
Can I just comment on that? And I think Marie and I have always taken slightly different perspectives on this.
Yeah.
The Grafton Lake and the Grafton Lake lands have highlighted the environmental values around the lake and wetlands associated with it. And if you turn that into a reservoir with a more fluctuating water table and a drawdown zone, and I totally agree in terms of the storage, the sort of engineering capacity is there to do that, but it will change those environmental values and aesthetic values around that lake. So it's easy to say we can raise the dam and we can store more water. I totally agree, but it is not as sustainable as it sounds to take those steps. And the other thing is, and I think that the fluctuating water table potentially is related to the increase in organics, and obviously the water treatment plant is a solution to that, but it can make it more challenging from a water quality perspective if we have that fluctuating water table that seems to increase the decomposition as we draw down those wetland areas around the lake during the summer. So just to keep that in mind when you're considering long-term storage objectives.
Yeah, it's exactly the thing we have to talk about. So let's leave that though to item 6.1. Okay. So was there anything else, Patrick, on that sustainability assessment? I mean, it came to the conclusions have been made in that report, right? That we have plenty of water.
Right, and I don't.
Murray, you and I will have to have one of our classic debates.
Right.
Well, let's do it at 6.1. But I'm just trying to get back to the agenda here, and that is later. I just wanted to know if that was the conclusion that the report said is the last sentence, I believe.
That's the general conclusion, and I think, like I mentioned earlier, we can test that conclusion with some more conservative assumptions about future growth in the system. So essentially assuming that it's going to expand more than we've presently allowed for. And that's not a lot of cost and effort to do that. And I think it would be beneficial to give people more confidence. But like Nick was saying, it's not just a water supply reservoir, and it's not just a watershed supplying a reservoir. It's there's a lot of other considerations around environment and land development and agriculture and you know, having a, you know, moving forward with a, you know, a watershed plan, a master plan for the Grafton Lake watershed would, I think, be very helpful in planning for the system.
Okay, now we do have 2 of those.
Okay.
Literally, we have 2, and we spent a lot of money on them back at the end of the 90s and early in the 2000s. They've done, Alan Whitehead did one. There was one we had a lot of funding for, and tested all the water coming out of the creeks and everything else, and projected the thing through for 20 or 30 years. So there's, I mean, we've got a lot of reports on shelves that people haven't read. And we come back to reinventing this wheel every time we have new people, to be honest. But again, let's move that one down the line. I think I have a solution for how to test those theories further down. But as a member of this committee, I would like to say that I am not in favor of spending any more money at this time on long-term planning until we have got our water treatment plant finished and a plan on how to pay for it. And I think that that's the time to look at master plans and future plans and possible outcomes 20 years down the road. We're not going to change the size of what we're doing right now based on anything that would come out of that planning, because we've got this huge excess capacity in our plant based on the studies to date that say that we could use that amount of capacity. So until we get even approaching it, I don't see a compelling reason to spend money, I guess is what I'm saying. So just, I'd like that noted for the record, that that's my position on it.
We can actually make, well, this is the whole point. We make adjustments to the budget to reflect the committee's comments.
Right. Okay, thank you. Okay. So is that now recommend water system recommendations, status report updates, your 4.2, is that?
So that was the 2019 round of LAC and information meetings, and it pulled them all into one list to give status on all those recommendations in one report.
Okay, and was there anything you want to speak to on that, Patrick?
I'm just looking through that list to see if there's anything we haven't touched on that relates to Cove Bay. I don't think there's anything else that we need to talk about.
Okay. Anybody else, any questions or concerns on that? Okay. So does that bring us then to Raj?
Hi there. I'm just setting up my PowerPoint and I'll share my screen.
Okay.
Bear with me for just a quick sec. Share. Okay, so you seeing the PowerPoint slide there?
Yep.
My screen's effectively shared. Okay. Thank you, Murray, and thank you, Patrick. Essentially, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview, or the objective of the financial section here is to explain the cost pressures for 2021 and to provide the local area committee with information proposed to be included in the 5-year financial plan for both the operating and capital budgets, and then for the LAC to make a recommendation to council with respect to those provisions. So in terms of the operating budget, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of water systems or utilities. The expenses of a water system need to be supported by the revenues that are collected from the water system. And in almost all cases, the expenditure provisions are comprised of administrative costs and direct costs. And in the case of Cove Bay, there are also debt servicing costs, which I haven't included in my slide here. So the administrative costs that are allocated include administrative salaries and benefits, municipal liability insurance, audit fees, IT support costs and communications costs, a portion of municipal hall rental, and office supplies and postage. And in terms of direct operating costs or operating wages of the public works employees, supplies and services used in the operation of the water system, contract services specific to that water system, property insurance that's related to the assets within the water system, and then the maintenance and infrastructure, the ongoing operating maintenance and infrastructure of the equipment, and any utility costs incurred in that process as well. In terms of the 2021 operating expenditure provisions, before I get into talking about the provisions, just highlight that there are, I believe, 651 connected properties and 5 unconnected properties in the Cove Bay system. And essentially in 2021, we're not proposing a rate to the water rates, given the substantial pressures of debt servicing that are going to come into play in 2021. So there are 2 significant pieces of debt that Patrick had touched on earlier. There is the MFA debt of I've got my number wrong here, it's 2.5 million. I took another. So 2.5 million for Cove Bay, and the annual debt servicing costs are $193 per connected property, essentially. And the internal debt, which is essentially back in March, we realized that the budget for the Cove Bay water treatment plant was going to exceed the available funding. So we're looking how to move forward, and council approved the use of the proceeds of sale received on 2 parcels of property to be internally borrowed by Cove Bay to allow the Cove Bay treatment plant to proceed. And so there was 1.175 million approved as internal borrowing from the Land Opportunity Reserve to the water, to Cove Bay water, and to repay that back over 10 years based on the number of users in the Cove Bay system would amount to $176 a year. So Patrick had alluded to Eagle Cliff coming into the equation of repaying that debt. So that would reduce that number if that were to happen. I have not taken that into consideration in this analysis. This is simply based on the current system the way it is. And so that is a definite cost pressure on the system. And then in terms of operating costs, we have, you had asked about this earlier as well, Murray. We have a new position added as a water treatment operator 2. And so we're allocating 65% of the salary of that position to the water treatment plant. So that plus the inflationary increase on existing salaries that are allocated to Cove Bay amount to an additional cost pressure of $83,200 in 2021. Which takes me to the next slide here, which is probably really hard to read. So I'm going to see if I can actually magnify that, and we can just look at pieces of that. I'm not sure how to do that here on my.
This is the same as in our agenda package.
This is the same as in your agenda package. So if you guys can follow along in your agenda package, I can speak to the slide. I'm going to focus on 2021 first. The financial implications for 2021. What I've tried to do here, in the spirit of being totally transparent and having people understand this, is I've tried to separate each of the components of revenue required for the two debt servicing parcels from the water rates. So essentially what this is showing is we would require $124,000 to fund the general fund debt repayment. That's the internal debt repayment over 10 years. And we require $112,900 a year in revenue to fund the the MFA debt parcel that is going to be repaid over 30 years. There are corresponding expenditure lines to each one of those down below at the bottom here in terms of the debt servicing. It's actually the sum of the debt servicing for principal and the debt interest that total those two amounts up above. We're not proposing any increase in utility rates in this given year due to the pressures imposed by the debt servicing components. And our revenues from utility rates are adequate to cover off our operating expenditures for the year. What we have done is redirected in 2021 a portion of the contribution to the reserve. So if you take a look here, contribution to reserve will go down to 114 from 168. So part of that decrease is actually going into servicing the general fund parcel tax for MFA debt, because we had a one-time increase to the reserve last year because we were bridging the increase in rates over 2 years to service the $2.5 million. So last year, actually, of the 168,700 that was going into reserves, between 45 and 60,000 of that was actually a one-time increase only because it was going to be used to service the debt as the debt came online. These numbers will obviously change. Well, the total revenue and expenditure numbers won't change, but the impact on each user would change if this became a combined Eagle Cliff Cove Bay water system, which is what Patrick was talking about earlier. But it is too early for me to anticipate that, and I created the plan based on the system the way it is today.
Can I ask a question?
On any questions on the operating statement before I move to capital?
You had said no fee increases, but we had approved last time around going to, I think it was $1.55 a cubic meter on the volumetric rate. It had started, it was at 110, and then it showed at $1.35, and then I think we ended up at $1.55. Where does that put us now? Where are we on what we're charging?
So we are, can you confirm that for me, Annette, if you're online? Are we at $1.55 or $1.35 right now?
155.
Okay, so we are currently at 155, and if we had been using just the water rate to fund that, we would be going up higher on both the fixed charge and the variable charge this year. However, I'm proposing that we charge out the debt servicing portions as parcel taxes, but I am waiting for a legal opinion from our lawyers to make sure that there's no legislative restriction preventing me from charging these as a parcel tax. If these are not, if I'm not able to charge them out as a parcel tax, then they'll be charged. I'll break out the rate. They'll become part of the water rates for the utility, and I will break them out as separate components on the statement of operations, so you can see what components of the utility rate are going towards servicing the debt.
All right. Now, what implications does this have when we went to referendum and got approval for a specific dollar amount of borrowing and advertised an increase in the annual rate to everybody based on how much we had to borrow to do the plant? And now we're looking at increasing that, almost doubling it, because we're looking at the other over 10 years instead of the longer period of time. Does that not give us some problems as to the optics, if not the actual, of dinging people like that?
Definitely, Murray, the internal debt servicing cost is an additional cost to users that was not communicated out earlier.
Right.
It reflects the increase in the budget of the treatment plant.
Well, I know why it's there.
Yeah, so in terms of the referendum itself, the referendum was a communication to borrow, and the communication to the public was based on what we knew at that time. So additional pressures came up after the fact. So we do definitely, as part of the budget, need a communication. We do have a communication piece planned as part of the public consultation, addressing the additional increase. And so we need to be clear about that and very clear and transparent with the public about that piece.
Okay. Does it make any sense to plan in an amount of money anticipated in future hookups, even if it's a very conservative amount of money, to plan on using that money to pay down the internal borrowing and thereby reduce somewhat the first year or 2 or 3 of the amount that the ratepayers or that the users are putting in? Is there any possibility of that type of thinking?
I have been thinking in that direction, and it would make total sense to do that. I mean, when I first started with Bowen Island Municipality, I was told that within the next 2 years, we would be receiving over $1 million, $1.1 million in connection fees for the Grafton subdivision. However, I've later learned that that is not going to come. That's going to come in phases. So we expect 230,000 next year, but that has been, or rather later this year, which is part of the funding equation for the water treatment plant. I mean, it would be wonderful if that came in sooner rather than later, but it's probably a 20-year plan. So for the Grafton developer, but definitely as funds come in from developments for connection fees or for expanding the boundary, they do go into reserves, and I would recommend that those reserves be used for addressing the debt repayments.
Or to get rid of the internal.
And get rid of the internal as the first part, for sure. But it's very hard to project when I mean, at the point I was trying to make in the explanation, if it got lost, was it's very, very difficult to project what is going to come in terms of new connection fees or expanding the boundary.
So we're basically stuck with going with the 176 as a parcel tax, as an increase in fees, as whatever. A bill going out to everybody, maybe divided into 3 or 4 parts in the course of the year or whatever, but still that is going to be added on.
Essentially for 2021, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And then it may change and go down as if you spread that over a larger number of users, like if we bring Eagle Cliff onto the system, then it would be shared by them, and there may be a contribution to reserves for them joining the system as well. I don't know what that's going to look like, and then that could also be used to address part of this as well.
All right. One way we might mitigate this is if we're sending out bills 3 times a year now, if we sent out the bill 4 times a year, if we divided it into quarterly, so that with an explanation of now it's quarterly to make it affordable because it includes the borrowing for the water treatment plant. that might, for people that live on a day-to-day budget type of thing, they get pretty ticked off when they get an unexpected big bill. So if you can spread it out more, they seem to like it more.
It'd be nice if you could spread it out that way, and we'll look at that internally at the possibility of doing that. The other reason I'm proposing this as a general fund parcel tax, Murray, is, and then that's why I'm waiting for a legal opinion on it, is parcel taxes are considered part of your property taxes and they can be deferred.
Right, you got it.
Can qualify for deferral, whereas utility rates cannot be.
Right.
So, and other utilities that have parcel taxes have been deferring their taxes. So as a parcel tax, it may qualify for deferral and provide some relief. I mean, immediate relief.
So would that just be the 176 then?
Both, if both are billed out as a parcel tax, and both debt servicing costs would, I believe, would qualify.
Maybe, I think though that considering
Provided that I'm on side and being able to do that. So that's provided I get a legal opinion supporting that.
Yeah, but I think that if we do, we already have the approval from everybody to raise their rates in the course of the year for the original 2.3 million or whatever funding. I think it probably makes sense to stick with that and divide that up between the three bills over the course of the year, because it's $70 more a bill or something, or $65. That I think people can live with. So anyway, it just, these are, I don't care how you do it. You can figure it out any way you want. There's just ideas.
Raj, it's Ron Cliff. I have a question for you about the parcel tax. I assume it applies to properties that are both on the system, obviously within the system, but on the system drawing water, and those that are not, like empty lots. Is that correct? So it's a larger number of units, the properties that the debt service will be applied against?
In my calculations, I have just applied it to the 647 parcels that I believe are connected. I'd have to look into that, Ron.
Okay, because the parcel tax implies, does it not, that it'd be applied to any lot on the system, whether they're connected or not?
That makes sense to me, and it was an oversight on my part. I think Allison was going to say something on.
Yeah, I was just going to say the parcel tax would apply to connected and unconnected. But my question is, would the parcel tax apply to the ones that are outside the boundary but are connected?
Yeah, we have in our investigations of the various scenarios to connect Eagle Cliff and some of the properties that are having issues with their wells, we discovered that there's probably about, I think there's 24 properties that are connected to Cove Bay water but aren't actually in the boundary. So we're still trying to figure out what to do with those situations. But it would seem that, if they're connected and we're metering them, that the all these fees should apply to them.
You can do with user fees. I think the specified area rules in the community charter are pretty specific about what you can apply taxes to. The other question I was going to ask is parcel taxes when you've got multifamily. You got 20 units on one lot. It's one parcel tax. But they might be 20 users. We just need to think about that too, just throwing it in for the thought.
Yeah. Has that been considered where we have our volumetric people, say the school or Artisan Square, Village Square, are they going to be paying more towards the capital cost than the person with a single family home, or will they still only pay the $200 or whatever, $400 a year? Do you know, Raj?
Currently, it's spread evenly across all users. I'd have to take a look at whether You can, I believe a parcel tax, you can't distinguish between what you charge the various classes. It has to be, you apply it equally across the various classes.
It's per parcel.
Pardon? It's per
parcel.
parcel, regardless of whether it's residential or commercial.
Okay, but if we forget the parcel tax and do it as part of our fees, can we structure that so that the amount charged on the capital is based on how much volume you take if you're over a certain level of volume?
I believe we do that currently.
But would that apply to the line item on your bill for debt servicing, or you know what I mean?
It would basically, it would make it very complicated if you were applying it on a volume basis, because you wouldn't be assured that revenue to repay back. Like the District of West Vancouver, for example, has looked at a number of different models with respect to variable charging based on consumption, and they have on an ongoing basis come up short on the amount of revenue required to service the fixed cost, typically speaking. So it's not a perfect system, and it's open to a lot of risks and unknowns. So the modeling is not an exact science when it comes to trying to generate a fixed amount of revenue. So you have a lot of variables and risks and not being able to collect the amount of revenue required.
Right. My thinking on it though is that if you're charging a standard person $369 a year, and you have a multifamily complex that is using 20 times as much volume or 10 times as much volume, we charge that complex based at $1.55 per cubic meter, and that can be calculated against a fair share compared to a standard usage of 200 cubic meters per whatever. There should be a way to formulate it and charge it, and then backward correct it. As you go forward, if you find that you didn't collect as much as you needed to, or you collected more than you thought you would, you make adjustments in future years.
It's called a deferral account in regulatory accounting, where you just carry forward your mistake, good, favorable, or unfavorable. Cheers.
Sounds like BC Ferries.
Are your BC Hydro bill?
Yeah.
But my point, Raj, is if you could explore that type of thing. So what we're trying to do is defray these costs as fairly as possible, and it's obviously not fair when our largest users pay $369 a year along with an unconnected lot, you know.
I can explore that further with Patrick.
Yeah, if you can. Sorry, go ahead.
We have, I'm just thinking the situation of the lot on the corner of Senior and Bone Island Trunk Road.
Whoops.
You're fading.
It's going to have 27 units in it. And yeah, that would certainly not be fair to be charged the same debt repayment as one house.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the same with, like, say, Artisan Square, Village Square, the school, and you know, maybe the old CNIB, Bowen Lodge, those types of things, Doc Morgan's or the Union Steamship Marina. There's some high volume users that really are getting a free ride.
But don't the commercial users pay higher rates now?
No, they don't pay. They pay their base rate the same as any single connection. Plus, if they use over 200 cubic meters, they pay $1.55 additional cubic meter, which works out to being considerably less than what a normal person pays per cubic meter if you take your average user. They're paying way more than that.
Yeah, the point that Bill Granger's been making, that the average cost for an excessive user is less than the average cost for a small user.
Yeah, exactly. And this really magnifies it. If we now take all this capital cost stuff and roll it into the same formula we've been using in the past, but we don't even charge it on the $1.55 a cubic meter over and above.
Yeah.
So if there's a way that we can prorate it with that volume that they use, they will still get a good deal. But it won't be as outrageous.
Yeah, so there are organizations that specialize in taking a look at volumes consumed and putting forward models for rate structures similar to what you're talking about, Murray. So I would think that, I'll discuss it with Patrick and see what route we take if we're following up on that in that direction.
Yeah. As I say, you don't have to put it into your budget planning, but build it that way, and then the following year look at how much better you did last year. That type of thing, see how much you've been able to reduce the amount of debt, because we're trying to get rid of that debt as quickly as possible anyway. Right? It's not like a fixed thing; it's just an internal repayment.
Yeah.
So we've got a little more flexibility in paying it off more quickly, I would think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to move. Any more questions on the operating slide before I move to capital?
I don't believe so. I may have to jump back to it when I look through my notes here, but let's move on for now.
Okay. So in terms of the capital slide here, this capital slide identifies, I'm going to talk about it on a larger scale, and then I'll let Patrick get into the specifics of the projects if there's any questions. So it basically shows that we need probably in excess of $3 million over the next 5 years in terms of capital works that are required. As you can see, the operating reserve balance is basically next to nil. The opening operating balance is nil for 2021. Almost all of the reserve funds have been used to fund the water treatment plant. We do have a projected 110,000 coming into the reserve in 2021. So we do have a funding challenge for even the $327,000 worth of projects that are identified as required in 2021. Staff are working on a funding strategy for that. So some of these projects may have to be deferred, the purpose of, or we may have to look at other ways of funding them as they're required. And I will be working on that with Patrick over the coming days. The idea and the rationale for presenting this capital slide the way it's been presented is to highlight what is required over the next 5 years in terms of capital works. And the assumption has been made that the outer year works, where we got significant water main upgrades projected in 2024 and 25, will be funded through borrowing further borrowing if if the reserve balance is not adequate, which my 5-year projection that I've done for reserves indicates that we will not have the funding available in the reserve unless we have a large injection from unanticipated connections at this point in time.
Right. I think in truth, it just isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And the reason it's not going to happen is because we would have to have the users approve the increase in their bills to pay for it. Would have to go to referendum to do the borrowing. And it's one thing to get a new treatment plant approved. It's another thing for replacing pipes in another section of the system. Or if it would just apply to that cul-de-sac, as long as people have water, they're reluctant to pay more money to keep it. You know what I mean? It's you need a large reserve going into it, or a capital grant from an outside source, or some sort of motivation to get that to happen.
And if I can add, again, this capital plan, and correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, but it's based on the system the way it is today as a solo system. So if it were expanded to include other systems, the situation and numbers may change for the outer years. But right now, the plan is basically projecting expenditures required on the current Cove-based system in isolation of the other systems. I don't know how that would change the water main upgrades number, for example, required in the outer years if we were to combine with other systems. Probably wouldn't.
No, it wouldn't. And it's really just an allowance to address asset management, asset renewal requirements for our aging water systems. So, you know, in the first year, 2021, that item that says enhancement of GIS database, that's really an asset management plan item to look at what is the extent and age and expected time frame for replacement and cost of replacement, and how does that stack up over the next 30 years. That's, I think, important for this and the other water systems to understand, to be able to have some realistic capital replacement planning. Right now, those are just placeholders, essentially, in the outer years. You know, recognizing that there's a substantial cost impact from the treatment plant, you know, and it might be, you know, 2024, 2025 before we're able to really get into addressing the capital renewal needs of the system.
Right. So that begs the question, is there any point in doing that GIS asset register? That's 65,000 over the next 2 years. Do we need to spend that 32.4 this year if we're short 357,000 or 327 or whatever it is? We're short a huge chunk of money this year.
Well, I think, you know, we need to move forward with proper asset management planning sooner than later. You know, we're really operating from, I mean, other than some major projects like the treatment plant, we're more or less operating from crisis to crisis. Something breaks, it has to be dealt with. Meanwhile, everything's getting older and we don't really have a sense of, well, you know, so we've got $19-20 million of assets in this water system. So what does that mean in terms of when we have to spend the money to replace that stuff? Yeah, I mean, we can push anything out and focus on other priorities. That would just push out our understanding of those important questions.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the requirement of good planning. However, the problem is if you don't have the money to pay for it, to spend a lot of money to tell yourself that you don't have the money to pay for what you should be doing, having just spent $65,000 to find out that you don't have the $3 million that you need. You know what I mean? It seems, but
Murray,
there are other examples in this budget as well. The update workflows information database, 50,000. What is that?
You know, again, some of these items are were put into the budget last year in 2019 for the 2020 budget, and we hadn't made much progress on it. In general, we've got some issues with the reliability and accuracy and extent of our monitoring information on the water systems. And so this would be a share of, you know, a larger project to look at improving those monitoring systems to be able to more effectively operate and manage our systems, and to, detect leaks more effectively and have better reliable data. That's
Would this actually put monitors on our system? I mean, is this physical flow readers and that sort of thing on?
Yeah, there would be some of that, and there may be some upgrading of existing monitoring equipment.
Does it strike you as something that is a pressing thing that we should be doing when we're in deficit?
You know, it's similar to the asset management and, you know, inventory of assets. It's important. It's not, you know, if you had to push it out, it's not the end of the world. I mean, we've been managing with the monitoring equipment and the data reliability that we've got, so we could continue to do so.
Okay. Okay. There's another one here. Install tank mixers and power to water reservoirs at Cates Hill and Valhalla. Is that shouldn't that be something we need less with our new system rather than needing it now? You know what I mean? We've never had it.
Yeah. Well, this is specific to the, you know, I in coming up with budgets for the water system, I met with our operators and utilities foreman and the new treatment plant operator to understand from them what they see as requirements in our existing systems. And this is an item that they brought up, is that these two tanks don't have adequate mixing, which, you know, could, I guess, does affect water quality.
It's chlorine mixing, right, Patrick?
Well, it's mixing the whole tank. Yeah. So I mean, you're mixing so that you don't
pour
have
chlorine into the system at those tanks, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is to enable it to mix. And Murray, we just did it at ours, and the water quality is much better.
Well, I believe that with the water we've got now, it might have been a good idea. But to have them just when we're coming on with our super water that's supposed to be so good, it just seems maybe we could go for a year without that and see if it's really necessary. That's my thinking. And again, I'm just trying to. I'd like to, you know, kind of rip this budget apart so that we get down to a point where we can justify every nickel that we're spending if we start getting more queries. I got one letter that was pretty to the point on a lot of things, and I'd like to have answers for those people if I could, or I'd like us to as a system. So
Well,
Didn't we find
if
that
you get
the low summer flow volume, the residual chlorine was dissipating too rapidly in those tanks? Is that related to this tank mixers?
I believe so. I'd have to investigate this one further.
I remember Bob's comment was the residual chlorine had declined so much just because there isn't enough flow through. People are being good water conservationists in the summer, and so you get below the health requirements around chlorination. So, you know, I think that would be the rationale. I'm not saying that, you know, there's lots of challenges around budget, I understand, but I think that's the background for it.
And probably would have been a good idea last year, but is it a good idea next year when we've got our water that's that the chlorine is theoretically redundant in?
No, Murray, it's all to do with the chlorine residuals at the end of the lines when they do.
No, I get that. But for example, the Valhalla tank, we have the rechlorination station immediately below the tank. We do have a rechlorination station here already. So if it's to add chlorination to the tail end of the system, it can be done for a few $1,000s by doing it after the tank, which we have done. So it's the Cates Hill tank. Again, they've got good flow through that system now that Cates Hill is built out. So we don't have the problems we had in the old days where there was just simply not enough water going through to make the thing work. Then we had to dump water out of the end of the system just to keep it clean. So anyway, I don't want to belabor this one too much. I understand what everybody's saying. I'm just, again, proposing that with the new thing, maybe we can push it back a year. That's all.
Yeah. Well, if you wanted to look at, what do you absolutely have to include in this budget for next year, which is kind of where you're heading.
Yeah.
There has to be, I believe, that provision for repairs and replacements, things that break.
Yes.
I think there has to be something in the budget to address the issues around that PRV chamber that we were talking about earlier. There's probably a cheaper solution to the immediate issues than $150,000. And the mixers, I'll talk to the operations staff. My guess is that it's something that could be deferred. And the asset management planning, water master planning, these are, I think, important things to do. They're not, things aren't going to come to a screeching halt if we don't. The residential water meter upgrade, that was really, again, that was put in last year. It was something we were looking at replacing with remote read systems that wouldn't require as much staff time on an ongoing basis to go out and read meters and provide more information to better manage the systems. So, it's an upgrade. It's not something that has to happen.
The last one on that then is that water master plan, 27,000 a year. Can we please take that out? Water master plan is the last thing that, with what we're doing now, we wouldn't have the money to do anything that we planned anyway. I just, another plan, I think that's a lot of money for consultants that we probably can avoid for this year at least. But I certainly agree that putting the 150,000 in for that PRV and that line makes sense, so that we have some money in the budget to fix things. And the provision for repair and replacement of equipment remains at $20,000. That's kind of a minimal amount for that. I would think maybe want to look at a little more for that and end up with the whole budget at something more like $200,000 rather than the 327. That's my thinking on it anyway. I don't know. How about the rest of you?
One question about the water master plan, is that going to be prorated on a per capita basis across the island, or is it based on complexity of the different areas, or how's that?
Initially it was put in the budget last year as a island-wide water master plan, substantial effort, divided based on number of connections. There was a lot of feedback in our LAC meetings early last year indicating that that's not the priority. We, have these other needs. So it was taken out. I think an island-wide water master plan, it would be helpful for us. So it wasn't a lot of thought other than spreading it out over a number of years, and rather than trying to tackle it all in 1 year. And really, we are moving forward with a number of elements of what would go into an island-wide water master plan, really based on addressing pressing needs, right? So we're trying to address water issues on the west side. We completed an aquifer monitoring program and study, and we've looked at the Grafton Lake sustainability question, and a number of other pieces are, moving forward as needed. So yeah, we could take that general item out and make sure that we're, if we're needing to spend planning money, that it's focused at this stage anyway on addressing a particular need or issue.
So Patrick, was there anything in the RFP that directly related to Cove Bay? Or are they like Eagle Cliff or Hood Point, and there was nothing in the RFP
Well, there
award.
was that item relating to the AC water line and PRV chamber is part of the RFP scope. And the work that's going on with, looking into the Eagle Cliff connection is obviously of interest to Cove Bay as well.
And I think Cove Bay said at the beginning with that Eagle Cliff one that they did not want to pay for any of the costs of that study because it was
Well, and they're not. It's not. That's portion of the work isn't being funded by Cove Bay.
I believe that's in the 2020 budget, right, Patrick? I mean, we did a reallocation.
Well, that work is. I mean, we just started it in October, so
But
it's going to be. It's
Yep.
going to be carrying on. To,
The point I was
next year.
trying to make was it's not part of this $50,000 budget provision. It's in the previous year and we'll be carrying forward those budgets because we did that reallocation to each water system, remember?
I'm looking at the spreadsheet in 4.1 or 4.1A. So that 27,000 is different, right?
So
it's different. It's all related though.
Yeah.
It's related. And one of the things that I haven't done here and I may have to do is an island-wide master study. So there are, right now, the allocation of the 50,000 is prorated based on the number of connections. And that's how we've gotten the 27,000. But Patrick has mentioned this to me in the past and I just haven't done that allocation. But perhaps a portion of that 50,000 also needs to be allocated to the general fund for those water systems that are on wells. And so it needs to be funded from taxation funding. So it would reduce the amount that's allocated to Cove Bay and to other
And another,
well for that matter.
sort of a slightly related topic, I still think that something that has never really been fully discussed is that Cove Bay water users pay a disproportionate amount for the amount of service that system has for the rest of Bowen Island residents. Whether it's the school, it's the commercial center, it's the marina, everything else is borne by Cove Bay water users, and that I think there's some fairness issues that need to be discussed in the future around that.
Okay, good point.
But Raj, what we want to do is take that 27,000, 50,000 master plan out of our budget period. And if it means a master plan doesn't get done at this time, so much the better. It can be done as small plans as it pertains to each of the water districts and But I really, anyway, I'll let you guys finish up talking about that. I really want to try to address this other issue that I want to bring up about the trucking water thing, and our time is running really short. So have we got any more discussion on the capital budget?
That's all I had on the capital budget, and that's my last slide. I do have a slide here that's more for interest than anything else. We've talked about the estimated replacement value of the Cove Bay system. This is based on the system without the water treatment plant as of 2018. Just the estimated replacement costs of the various components are highlighted here. And I will get staff to send this PowerPoint out or the slides from this PowerPoint out to everybody so that they have them as well.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Now, so
Maury, I've got been jotting notes for a detailed recommendation. I can share the screen.
sorry, try again.
I've got detailed notes notes for a detailed recommendation to council regarding the budget.
Okay,
Can I share my screen?
so the
So basically, I've just got one note on the operating budget regarding
sorry,
the parcel tax.
trying to pull this up. Do you want to just read it for us?
Yeah, I'm gonna, can you look at it?
I am just trying to find it here.
Well, no, you don't have it because I have it.
Oh,
You're not screen sharing, Steph.
I'm just trying to get permission, but I'm just gonna forge ahead.
yeah, sure.
She's going to screen share it so we can all see it.
Oh, rather than read it. It's
I'm trying to be a little bit more specific with committees and what they're voting on. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I picked the wrong screen. Okay. Can you see a Word doc?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, weird. It's above a different monitor. Okay, so I've got this generic that you guys approved the financial plan with the following comments. So I captured that the parcel. Do you want to read that, Marie?
Okay. Operating budget that regarding the parcel tax to be applied to all Cove Bay residents, including connected and unconnected properties to service internal debt, the possibility of prorating volumetric rates be explored, which considers inequities of quantities of use, example, commercial and multi-housing lots. Okay, capital budget that the tank mixers installed item be deferred. Sorry, can you scroll over? Can you slide the thing over so I can see your page 2 a little better? I've got everybody's face on top of it. You follow, Steph? Yeah, there we are. Whoops, there we go. That the updating FlowWorks information database item be deferred, that the water master plan item be removed, conservative amount of
So
money.
these are little quite scratchy notes. I don't know if.
Yeah. Conservative amounts of money be put aside for predicting new connections.
That would be
Conservative amount of
operations.
money be put aside for predicting new connections. I don't understand that.
Did
It's
you
not
say
put aside, it would be included in the revenue line for new connections.
Didn't you say you wanted a little bit of money that's like a
No,
okay.
we don't want,
Right.
we will take the money if it comes and look at it then.
Okay.
If we do some prorated money on the volumetric pricing.
But you didn't want a budget line for projected new connection revenue?
Well, that's the next one. The incoming revenue from new connections be directed to debt servicing.
So that's just what happens to it. It's
Okay.
not going to show in the budget.
Let the bill to service debt servicing be spread out broadly and does not arrive at a bulk amount. Oh, that is to explore the possibility of sending user bills out 4 times a year rather than 3.
Okay, perfect.
But that's definitely an explore the possibility. If there's if staff
What was it sending what out?
Billing
dividing.
users quarterly.
Yes, thank you. Possibility of billing users quarterly. Okay.
Let's say that I create that a line item, Ellison, be created, indicate new revenue from new connections. Is that what we're saying doing?
No, we've done that already. The incoming revenue for debt servicing.
Okay, but I
Allison's saying that.
thought you had indicated you wanted it shown as revenue in the budget.
No.
We
Okay,
don't know what that revenue is.
yeah, right. I was going to say, that's fine. I'm happy with not having it in there.
Right. Yeah.
You want this though, the incoming revenue from new connections be directed?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and then, oh, we already did that one. Okay. Okay. So operating budget, 3 bullets, capital budget, 3 bullets. Is there anything else?
Actually, on that first recommendation, can we split that into 2 recommendations? Because we can do the connected and unconnected properties for servicing internal debt for this year. But I don't believe the second recommendation can be done in the short run. That would require quite a bit of investigation.
The billing?
I don't think you were proposing that we do the volumetric rate exploration for this budget period, were you, Marie? I mean, I thought the conversation was looking at that in the long run. and exploring that option in the long run.
This is
If you
just
do it- if you do
defining it.
2021 billing, I would.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. I'll tell you that right now.
Okay.
I was just explaining it.
Okay, let's figure out the wording then here. So how do you want to see it then, Raj?
You could have it as a second bullet point, and that council direct staff to explore the possibility of prorating volumetric rates. And if you want it for 2021, keep it that way. I mean, there's no way we'll be able to do that, but I would suggest that you ask us to look at that for 2020.
Okay, but it's to explore the possibility of using the volumetric rate amounts in calculating share of capital cost. The volumetric rates, we already have it for the usage.
For debt servicing.
Yeah, for debt servicing. Okay,
Yeah.
possibility of using, what am I saying, Allison?
Yeah, possibility of using volumetric rates for debt servicing.
Okay. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
Patrick knows what I mean. Okay.
But the only reason I included this parcel tax bit was just to,
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, that's.
you don't
that's
need this
fair,
anymore, right? That's
fair.
gone
No,
now.
we still need that.
Well, wasn't that
Oh,
what?
that was already, that
Proposing?
was one of Raj's points, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted them split up. We still need to apply the parcel tax, so I don't know if
Hit your back arrow there, Steph, and put it back in. Yeah.
But I don't want a parcel tax.
Well, but Raj wants it for this year because he hasn't got time to do the other work.
Okay. Okay, so we have a
But
motion.
this isn't right though now regarding the parcel.
Okay, so
I just
then
wanted to
say that,
parcel tax be
that
applied.
for 2021, the parcel tax be applied.
Be applied to all Cove Bay residents.
It has to be Cove Bay properties.
To all properties, all connected and unconnected properties? To all connected and unconnected properties in the service area, or, no, we can't do that. Okay, all connected and unconnected properties.
Aren't those all properties?
I'm just being clear so people don't ask.
True.
Okay, close enough. Okay,
So I also just want you all to recognize that I mean, we will definitely explore that second option, but if we are able to apply a parcel tax and we convert to going to volumetric rates and making it a utility rate, then it will no longer qualify for deferral of taxes. So people will have to pay that rate on an annual basis.
so that would be, yes.
Yeah, so that would just be an implication of the two. And we'll look at that with the volume as we investigate the volumetric pricing as pros and cons.
Okay, so
And
that
then the
would
other
be-
thing you've got to look at is the volumetric pricing will pick up the bigger users, which the parcel tax won't.
Exactly. And that's what we would like to do. So if it means we lose the ability to use the parcel tax by increasing the 20 or 30, whatever it is, very large users and the amount of money we can get on that, I would suggest that we would want to do that. But possibly we can discuss this. We've got this in as to explore and that sort of thing. You guys don't have to do what we tell you anyway. So why don't we just pass this sucker and move on? Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor of the motion as shown? Those opposed? So that.
I need to hear you.
Oh, sorry. Those opposed? Okay, the motion is carried.
Okay.
Okay. So if I may, I'll try to do this as quickly as possible. We've got this huge tank up at the treatment plant. We have a concern as to whether or not the lake will actually go down if we use more water. You don't get to test that very often. You have to have a super drought year, and you're not going to pour water out for no good reason. We do have a complication of you have to only supply water within your service area, so you have to define your service area in such a way that you can supply water. But if we could put allow people to bring water trucks for delivery on Bowen Island to back up to that tank and fill it up when we have a shortage of water places on the island, it would give us a real-time, real-life stress test to find out whether or not the lake does go down more than 1 meter. In all the years that I've been studying this lake, it goes down to 105 meters and it doesn't go any lower than that. The data that we've gotten in the past was always at the dam, and the dam didn't show it because there's a mud dam back in the lake that didn't allow the water to come through. So by allowing people to truck water out of there, we can actually see if we can get that lake to go down any further. And this is to address Nick's concern that, that we don't know whether or not we'd be turning this into a reservoir. And by doing it with a truck basis, you could stop it tomorrow. You can say, hold it, this lake is going down. We don't want to do that. We now know what the practical limited capacity of this lake is before we start getting too much fluctuation in water depth. So that's why I suggest this. It ticks a whole bunch of boxes, particularly for people on the island that run out of water sometimes in the middle of the summer and pay $800 for a big truck to bring it in from the city. And we are going to be sitting there with a capacity in our plant, what, 4 times what we're going to use? 3 times, something like that. And we're going to have water in that tank. If we fill that tank for fire service, we're going to run into, I think, possibly the problem of not running the water out fast enough to keep it clean to the end of the system. So that was why I thought this thing would be a good idea. Any thoughts?
I'm supportive.
I would-
I think the only thing we should probably do is have a tariff for it.
Yeah. You would charge people for it. You'd have to.
But I'm thinking the water in the truck is like de minimis, right? Because how many 1,000 liters are in a water truck? I'm going to guess 5,000 or something. I mean, we're talking 5 times $1.55 if I'm doing my math right. So it's really the fixed charge that has to be worked out. I don't know what, that's a bit of a.
Yeah, but if it ended up being $100 or $200 a load, it would be so much for the volume of the water and so much for the hookup for manpower and cost of facilitating the person and setting up the thing and sending them the bill and so on. So you could probably divide it into a volume and a fixed fee.
Fencing fee.
Again, I don't think it's going to end up being a whole heck of a lot of money compared to the size of our system. But it would sure save a lot of people on the island money if we got into a bad year for wells as we did a few years back. And they were spending a lot of money bringing water over. And it fills the ferry, right? And it's not green, not efficient, et cetera, lots of reasons.
So being one of the persons that might have to try and sell this to council, sort of picking up on Ron's comment, I don't know how much water would actually come out to actually check the depths of the lake. The other issue is the whole issue of expanding the service area. Our current license with the province says the water shall only be used through a particular area. And there's a map attached to the license. So that means we have to go to the province to get the license amended.
I don't think so, Allison.
Yes, it is, Murray. I can produce it for you.
Okay, but back when I was chairing this, we did expand the service area and we didn't go to the province. The service area got expanded up into Kate's Hill. It got expanded up.
You sure we didn't go to the province? Because there's 2 licenses. One, and I think one's the old one and one's the new Kate's Hill one.
Okay, we need that if the controller of waterworks has to.
Yeah, and the other question is, the plant's not going to be completed. When's the plant going to be completed, Patrick?
Probably be beginning of April that we're using it.
Okay. But we wouldn't be wanting to be, we're still figuring it out. So starting to do wholesale distribution of water.
It wouldn't be until August probably that anybody would even
But
be
then
in a
there's a
position of
whole,
needing it.
I guess I'm just concerned about staff time, which we don't have a
Yeah.
lot of, to investigate all of this and that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah, that was my thought too, is it's not a bad idea. It's just who's going to, who's going to figure all this out? That was one of the reasons we'd included, or we were looking to include a budget item for planning related work for stuff like this. And, you know, if we're looking at, you know, Nick mentioned earlier about the fairness around rates and investigating a better rate structure and how that should be set up. I mean, that would be part of a master planning scope. I think if we're going to choose where we focus our efforts, looking at, I mean, there's a lot more value. It seems like there's a lot more value to expanding the system. You know, and even if Eagle Cliff connection is another year out, we know that there's, I think 18 or 20 properties in the Ocean View area that are willing to pay for the infrastructure and the fee to connect. And, you know, there's a bunch of work around that to get the boundary extended and get the work moving forward. I think if I'm looking at prioritizing our own staff time, that would be a better use of time to me at this stage.
Could I make a comment to Allison's, your point about expanding the service area? This would be a non-mandatory connection. This would be what I would call best effort. I mean, let's face it. If there was somebody in the island in trouble this coming August, and the plant's up and running, and we have a point or a tank can connect, that truck's going to go. I mean, I'm sure not standing in its way.
no, but there's a difference between an emergency, Ron, and planning this to try and do.
That's what I'm speaking of. Really, I think what Murray's really talking about, if I'm reading, is it's not trying to get other systems dependent on having trucked water from us. It's really an emergency basis. I think we have to get our head around that. That's really what you're talking about, isn't it, Murray?
Well,
Oh,
now
yeah.
look at his second paragraph or second clause under reasons.
What did I say?
Could expand our service area to all of Bowen with these conditions, but that means amending the license and all that stuff. So
No, that would be that the truck could deliver, but not off of Bowen, right? In other, so that it would the idea was a blanket easement type of idea where you just includes that as a catch-all phrase and then set up your conditions such that you control it with the conditions. But no, the points are all well taken, and the odds of it being a dry enough summer this summer that it'll actually matter are probably not that great. I will do some more work on it, so you're not utilizing staff time, and take a look at what the implications are for our water license and such like. And there's community charter issues with it and so on as well. So I'll try to come back then with a more detailed report at a future meeting, if there's no philosophical problems with us doing that. Is that fair enough?
I did look at one of the older water licenses held by a municipality, and Allison's right that it does specify a maximum quantity that can be removed.
per day.
And also which land is to be used is within the boundaries of the Cove Bay Improvement District.
Right.
And that's one, I presume there's multiple licenses and multiple amendments too, so I'm not saying that's current, but there was that clause in there.
Yeah. And that's true. And we did expand the boundary of the improvement district when we added new areas to it.
Yeah, but there's 2 licenses
Okay.
and they've got a maximum amount per day in them as well.
Right. Yeah. No, I know. I'm familiar with that. Okay. Fair enough. Why don't we end this before we all start? It's 10 to
Die of
6.
starvation.
Pardon?
I said before we die of starvation.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, anything else that we should be, any housekeeping stuff?
Just the information that, items that are included are the notes from the community information meeting, the letter about Eagle Cliff, and the rates.
Okay, and we all have that.
You want to call for questions from the public, Marie?
Hey, does the public have any questions? Doesn't appear to. Okay. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry it took so long.
Bye.